English is not all about nouns, pronouns, or verbs. It also has a history and origin. In this video, you will be able to discover and learn some trivia about British and American literature. So hi there, ladies and gentlemen. Just keep watching if you want to join me discover and explore the British and American literature. Let's go for trivia number 1. For our first stop, let's discover some of the British and American writers and poets. I bet this author's famous work will remind you of your childhood. Alan Alexander Milne, an English author, best known for his books about the teddy bear Winnie the Pooh and for various children's poems. Milne was noted writer primarily as a playwright before the huge success of Poe overshadowed all his previous work. Milne named the character Winnie the Pooh after a teddy bear owned by his son, Christopher Robin Milne, who was the basis for the character Christopher Robin. His toys also lent their names to most of the characters. Christopher Robin's toy bear is now on display at the main branch of New York Public Library. Christopher Milne had named his toy bear Winnie, an American black bear which he often saw at London Zoo, and Poe as one they had met while on holiday. The bear cub was purchased by Canadian Lieutenant Harry Colburn in White River. He named the Winnie after his hometown in Winnipeg. Trivia number 2. Edgar Allan Poe, an American writer, poet, editor, and literary critic, considered part of the American Romantic movement, best known for his tales of mystery. Poe was one of the earliest American practitioners of the short story and is considered the inventor of the detective fiction genre. He is further credited with contributing to the emerging genre, science fiction. He was a well-known American writer to try to earn a living through writing alone, resulting in a financially difficult life and career. Trivia number 3. Well, did you know that Pride and Prejudice is the romantic literature of Jane Austen? Pride and Prejudice was published in 1813. It was adapted hundreds of times in film, TV, and literature. Its original title was First Impressions. Like many of Austen's early work, Pride and Prejudice was originally told in letters. This was a common style at that time. The novel was first finished in 1797 but was not published for another 16 years. Trivia number 4. I bet you have already watched this movie. Yes, that's right, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Like other movies, this was first a novel. The author of this famous novel is Roald Dahl. Dahl was a British novelist, short story writer, poet, screenwriter, and wartime fighter ace of Norwegian descent. Dahl has been called one of the greatest storytellers for children of the 20th century. Dahl invented around 500 words over the course of his writing, some of which are in common use today. Charlie and Chocolate Factory was based on his life. Like many of his books, Dahl looked to his life for inspiration when writing this classic. While at boarding school in the 1930s, he and some of his friends were selected as chocolate taster for the nearby Cadbury's Chocolate Factory. Dahl imagined being invited by the owner to take over the factory after winning a magical prize, and the idea for the book was formed. Out of all his stories, Dahl said that the BFG was probably his favorite. The story has now been made into a blockbuster film by Steven Spielberg. Dahl wrote his stories in a shed at the end of his garden using an HB pencil on yellow notepads. The original writing shed can now be seen at the Roald Dahl's Museum. Trivia number 5. Let's talk about Beowulf. Beowulf is an Old English epic poem which consists of 3,182 long lines. It is considered to be one of the most important books in Anglo-Saxon literature. The poem is set in Scandinavia, although it was written in England. It uses different dialects of Old English for the spelling and has many different linguistic styles. The lines in Beowulf use a lot of alliteration, meaning that they repeat certain syllables or sounds. The only known existing copy of Beowulf is now in the British Library in London. The manuscript was put in paper frames to protect it. in 1845, although it is very fragile. Michael Morpurgo published a really successful children's version of Beowulf. Beowulf has also been translated into many languages, including Greek, German, Japanese, and Russian. Beowulf has been featured in many novels, films, and even computer games. There have also been several operas about the book, including at least one rock opera. J.R.R. Tolkien, the author of The Lord of the Rings, made a translation of Beowulf in the 1920s. Trivia number 6. Let's talk about the famous Geoffrey Chaucer. We all know him because of his famous story, The Canterbury Tales, but this time, let us also recognize his other work. One of Chaucer's earliest poems was an ABC, an acrostic which he wrote for people to use in prayer. Chaucer also wrote an early work of popular science. His treatise on the astrolabe is possibly the first science book written in English, dating from around 1391. It is also perhaps one of the first books in English written for children. Many critics believe it was written for Chaucer's own son, Lewis. Here we go for our last trivia. Trivia number 7. The Canterbury Tales of Geoffrey Chaucer. It was one of the first books to be written in English language. The Canterbury Tales is still incomplete. The Tales is a collection of 24 stories, but Chaucer had planned more than 100. He started writing in 1387 and continued working on it until his death in 1400s. Though the epic poem has more than 17,000 lines, it was meant to be longer. Chaucer's decision to write the Canterbury Tales in Middle English was significant. When Chaucer penned his magnum opus, most of England's elite spoke French, thanks to the Norman invasion. His decision to write the Canterbury Tales in Middle English, the language of the common folk, cemented his literary legacy. The epic is regarded as one of the first major works of English literature. So there you go. Those are just some of the amazing trivias and facts about the British and American literature. I hope you gained something from this video.